It's so important that strategically you're thinking about who you're aligning with, because those are the people that are going to decide the long term if this is going to succeed or not. So find the people that are going to be your captains, find your generals, find the people that you want to go out and build something with, because that's going to allow you to scale. It's incredibly critical that the people that are your generals or the people that are the leaders on your team, those people are aligned directly with you on what the vision is, because they need to understand the vision. They need to be able to teach the other people on the team and in the company exactly what you all are aspiring to do. My name is John Bowler, and this is the None Size Fits All podcast, where every week I'll be sharing my candid thoughts on what's happening in the real estate industry. Good afternoon. Welcome to the None Size Fits All podcast. My name is John Bowler, co-founder of Grid Consulting. Today, we're going to be talking about building a new team, growing an existing team, building a product or a company from scratch, and what are the keys to success. So I recently received a text message from a friend, and they reached out and said, like, you've done these different things in the past, and I want your advice on a new project that I'm working on. And I want to just kind of pick your brain and see, how would you approach this if you're building it from the ground up? And this is a really meaningful conversation to me, because it's something that I love to do. I love starting over. I love starting and creating something brand new with the goal to build it for the next 2 to 3 years. And then it should be ready to kind of go out on its own, and I can start on my new thing. So I find myself talking about and really breaking it down into, this is our approach. This is what we do to grow or build or create things from scratch. And so I'm going to run through those. So the first thing that we always start with this idea of a vision. And I previously in a podcast talked about this idea of the North Star, where the North Star is really that vision. And for every single project or team that I've worked on, I'd say the biggest kind of key thing that we started with was this idea of a vision. So what is a vision and what does it mean? The vision is basically the roadmap. The roadmap tells you where you're going and how you're going to get there. What I found really interesting was the exercise of creating that vision allowed me to really kind of shape and guide people of, this is where we're going and this is how we're going to get there. So the exercise was twofold. It was like, this is great for me because I'm forced to think about all the details of my own business, but then I get to do this presentation. The presentation is, here is the business plan, and I'm going to deliver it to each and every single person on this team that we're working on this project together. So create the vision, then present the vision to every single person on your team. If you're at a company, your team members now will understand why we're doing things the way that we are. If you're a real estate professional, people will understand up front, because you've set the right expectations of how their individual role fits into the much broader picture. So the vision to me is always like, craft it, document it, and then turn it into something that you can then teach other people, so that they realize they're on the same playing field or they're on the same path that you are. And so every time that you're making recommendations or making changes to the business, you can align and go back to, this is what we had talked about X amount of time ago. So it starts first and foremost with that vision. Do you have a plan? Do you have an idea? Secondly, who is your team? So when you start on a project, it's kind of like you're back in middle school, and you're in gym class, and you're going to pick your teams for basketball. It's so important that strategically you're thinking about who you're aligning with, because those are the people that are going to decide the long term if this is going to succeed or not. So find the people that are going to be your captains, find your generals, find the people that you want to go out and build something with, because that's going to allow you to scale. It's incredibly critical that the people that are your generals or the people that are the leaders on your team, those people are aligned directly with you on what the vision is, because they need to understand the vision. They need to be able to teach the other people on the team and in the company exactly what you all are aspiring to do. So when I think about vision and team, you start to create this cyclical effect of lots of people knowing what the vision is. The generals are teaching it. And as you start moving up that mountain and you're starting to chase that big dream as a company, you have all these people that are aligned on what that common goal is. But figuring out who those people are is really the key to being able to scale and do it effectively. Is you need multiple people. And as your ratios change, you need to be able to have people that you've already developed from your bench. Thirdly, we think about process and standardization. Built lots of teams, and Growing a team to 25 people, it's challenging. It's very hard. It is doable for one kind of floor general or one leader to run a team of 25 and do it well. But what you see is this change. You see this change happen at kind of like the 25 to 35 person team level where people start to struggle to grow. They start to struggle to grow for a number of reasons, one of which is control. So they didn't develop the bench. They don't have enough generals in place. And now the ratios have hit a number where that's instead of 8-1, eight team members to one leader, you now have 15-1. There's just not enough time in the day and you're trying to grow it and your ratios continue to grow. But if you have developed a team, you would have been able to scale this thing more effectively. So like growing from that kind of small to medium to then the next iteration is really about how you're going to develop your bench and ultimately your leadership team. But how can you do that? Like how can you grow a team without losing quality? Well, one, as a leader, you have to develop your team members and you have to be able to give up control. But two, one of the biggest and easiest ways to help yourself is to add process and standardization across the board and then teach that downstream. So when I'm thinking of like going back to the vision, part of my vision for my team members is explaining the process and standardization and then using real-time examples of people that have followed that path and had success. Why? Like why do I want to add process and standardization? You interact with a lot of people that say, I don't like rules or I don't want to have to micromanage. This is not about micromanagement. This is not about rules. This is about giving people the recipe for success. And when you think about big corporations or big companies, one of the movies I recently watched is like the movie with Michael Keaton about McDonald's. And the story of McDonald's and how they were differentiated was really tied to this concept that they had process and infrastructure and it was like a conveyor belt and they just were like, this is what we do. It didn't make McDonald's bad people because they had a process or a standardization. It actually made it so that when they introduced a new restaurant or a new team member, they literally like had this path, this recipes that was like a rinse and repeat. So you're able to basically scale really quickly through this kind of standardization of process. You will hear people talk about it though. It's like, I don't want that. That's fine. If you don't want that, you can still scale, but it won't be as efficient as if you have like a clear recipe and a clear path. And this is a way to actually create that control that most people want when they're in a leadership position. The next thing that I'd recommend to my friend was this concept of big data and planning. Part of the vision, yes, it's a process and this is where we're going. But you're also going to need to be able to track and show this is where we're at, this is where we're going, and this is all the data that I turn each stage into. So you have like stage 1 through stage 10, and each of those is this kind of like tangible, here's my net outcome or what I'm chasing. But really, you need to be able to turn each of those kind of actionable stages into large sets of data that you can track so that as you're going up or down or having challenges with your business, you can quickly identify what the problem is before it becomes a much bigger one. So we call that, resource planning or modeling. We basically model everything out. And not only do we model out like the next 3 months, we actually model out the last 2 years, and then we model out the future 2 years because we're trying to be ahead of everything. And if I have these kind of large sets of data that I can track, it's much easier to run in a business that's not as volatile and kind of, going all over the place. So the resource planning is basically kind of your guide. This is here's where we are going to be at, and we update it regularly and we start tracking the ups and downs. But then we have a more robust set of reporting. And a lot of people will use, like a Tableau or a Salesforce. But the key with that type of reporting is myself as the leader, I need to become addicted to tracking those numbers. So the resource planner allows me to think about past and really future, but the kind of day-to-day reporting allows me to track the kind of operations that I'm on that given day. So you have the real-time reporting that is necessary that tells you if the team is doing well and I can pivot then and make changes, like have a team meeting and get people excited. That allows me, the day-to-day reporting allows me to do that. The resource planner allows me to go past and present, but all of this is about me being awake, me being aware, me paying attention to the actual business itself and not reacting to, I had a bad month and wondering why. Literally, you should be able to see how the month is pacing every single day. And myself as a leader or the person running the business, I need to be tracking it and making sure that if I'm not pacing for my forecast or not pacing for my goal, I need to be able to make pivots. And the only way to do that is through data. Another big one that I talked to my buddy about was KPIs. I geek out quite a bit on data, not because I'm not a finance or accounting background necessarily. I geek out on data because it allows me to focus on certain KPIs that are important. And I'd say one of the more common mistakes that you see with leaders or people trying to build business is you ask like, what are the core KPIs that you all are tracking? And they give you a list of 30. They give you a list of 30 KPIs and say, we're tracking all of these. And you're like, okay, which ones are most important? And if you can't really dial in like 5 to 6, the question I'd have is like, do you really understand what you're trying to do? It's like, when I'm building that vision, I'm building that path of where I'm going, I need to be able to identify these are the 5 most critical ones that I'm going to focus on. And yes, from those 5, you can then get more granular, and you should, but those 5 will allow you to level set on a day-to-day basis and make sure things are running smoothly. And then when you want to dial in 1, you focus on that 1 and then you drill into it. But those 5 will allow you to consistently outperform the kind of goal and forecast. So for myself, if I think about real estate, for instance, I'm going to think about my marketing expense, my closings, what my goal was, what my cost per lead was, what my conversion was, what my connection rate was. I know I just named off like 7, but like those are things that I would be focused on. Those are things that will allow you to more efficiently run your business and improve your margins. If I'm running a subscription business, I'm thinking about subscriber growth. I'm thinking about churn rate. I'm thinking about average revenue per user. I'm thinking about my operational performance of my team. Like, do we have crazy deviation? Is there volatility in the output each day? Or can I somehow control that and make sure that it's consistent across the board so that, we're staying true to what our bigger goal is? And then how this ties in after KPIs is really kind of dialing this all in and put a ribbon on it. Are you regularly looking at all of the different things that I just referenced and making sure that they align? So having regular performance and operations meetings where it's not about like saying good or bad, it's about being aware of what's happening and then strategically thinking about what we're going to do to change that. So I have my vision. My vision is the roadmap. It tells me what I'm trying to do, what my goal is. I then have a team of generals, and there's ratios that basically say at this point, I need to be able to promote somebody from my bench that I've been developing simultaneously and keep the ratios high of leader to team member. I need to add process and standardization because that will allow me to scale more quickly without losing quality. And that'll kind of get rid of that fear of giving up control. I need resource planning that looks at past and present so that I can align on how feasible it is to achieve my goals. I need daily reporting so I can at least be aware of what's happening on a day-to-day basis. I don't lose a day. I need to be able to identify what my KPIs are. Are these important? Which ones are important? These are the things that are going to be effectively my triggers. And then lastly, I need to review it. And this is how I think of like building a team. And this sounds way more complicated than it is. It's really like the same thing that you do for every single project, but you have to commit to each of these things. And often people, they look at 1 or 2 of them and they go, this is not important. Process isn't important, or I don't like KPIs, or that's not my thing. It's not about being, if it's your thing or not. It's about this is what it takes to be successful. These are things that you need to do in order to really control and grow something long-term that is scalable and that will allow you to hit that kind of peak that you are pursuing on the vision. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. Check us out on Instagram, check us out on Facebook, check us out on YouTube. We love the weekly podcasts and look forward to chatting with you all. Thanks. Thank you again for listening. Every week I'll be releasing fresh content, so tune in. And if it's of value, please share it with your network.